Hey everybody, Jace Bosman here. It's July and I know it's getting close. I'm getting excited. I know you're getting excited, and maybe for some of you this will be your first trip out west. Maybe this is your maiden voyage, or maybe for some of you this is your 5th or 6th, or maybe it's a yearly deal. But one of the first seasons up is going to be archery pronghorn, and when it comes to a great animal that represents the West that's fun to bow hunt, it just doesn't get any better. And so what we're going to talk about today is some tips and tactics specifically to help you over water, because that is one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to successfully harvesting a pronghorn. Yes, water is bar none the best way to up your success and get antelope on a controlled water source where you can make a good shot from a ground blind. However, if you pick the wrong water source, you're going to be in for long, miserable, hot days boiling in a box, and it's going to take every ounce of joy out of you, and you're going to lose hope in the situation pretty quick. So how do we go about finding the right water hole for antelope? Well, first and foremost, that research should start at home, and it should start right now. Pull up your hunt area, jump on Onyx, jump on Hunt Stand, whatever online digital mapping app you use, jump on there and start looking at your hunt area. While you have your digital maps up, go ahead and have a good topo map, a hard copy map laid out on your kitchen table, as these will help you pinpoint water sources. What are you looking for? You're looking for stock tanks that ranchers use. You're looking for dirt ponds. That's just a pond on the prairie that collects water. Seeps, springs, anything like that. You want to go through your hunt area and mark every single water source that you possibly can. Now, some water sources you can discard pretty quickly. Antelope like what you're seeing behind me. Bald, open ground where they can use their eyesight, their binocular vision, and their legs to get away very quickly. So you can go ahead and disregard those water holes a lot of times, unless it's a weird situation that are at the head end of a canyon or in a very treed area or something that they have to walk down into. They don't like to do that. They know that they could be ambushed in those types of situations. They want to be out here where they can drink and see. So the next thing you want to look for is, if you can tell on your mapping system, and a lot of times with a digital map you can, you're looking for those dirt ponds. And a pond is better over a tank for this reason. Antelope can water at a pond drinking with their eyes up, so they can drink as they scan. A lot of rancher stock tanks will be below the level of the aluminum or the tire or whatever the tank is made of, and that requires those antelope to dip their head down in there, and they just aren't in love with that. They have to lower that eyesight for a brief second. It makes them very nervous. So look for water that is already on the ground. Now, the next thing you want to do is, once you show up to your hunt, you've got to burn some rubber on your truck, on your four-wheeler, whatever. Get out and go inspect your top water sources. And here's what you're going to look for. Obviously, if it's a spring, seep, or pond, tracks are going to be pretty easy to see. They give up tracks really, really, really easily. Other things, while you're driving into these pastures, make sure you have a good pair of binoculars and really take the time to stop and glass, stop and glass, stop and glass. If antelope are in the pasture that water source in, that's already a good sign. If you show up and there's tracks at the water source, that's another good sign. Identify where the majority of those tracks are and where those antelope are coming into, especially if it's a sizable pond. You want to be right where they want to be, so that you can set your blind accordingly and make a good shot. Now, let's just say that it's extremely dry, a severe drought, and pond water isn't an option. Then you're going to have to look to stock tanks. Now, there's nothing wrong with stock tanks. They love them. However, if you can find a tank that has a busted float where that water is spilling out on the ground, or that has a leak in the side or something like that where water is seeping out, those tanks instantly become more attractive, because again, those antelope can approach those tanks and they can water off of the ground without having to dip their head down into the tank. So don't be afraid to go investigate and look at those stock tanks. The difference in a stock tank is, a lot of times the ground around those tanks is cement hard. Ranchers drive them, cattle pound them out, and they don't give up tracks very, very easily. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to follow the cattle trails. You can do this at ponds and other things as well, springs. Follow the cattle trails that lead to and from water. Start walking those trails. They'll be a little bit more powdery, and pretty soon you'll be able to identify numerous tracks if pronghorn are in that area. You're going to see tracks coming down the trails. You're also going to see scrapes if bucks are in the area. Bucks scrape regularly. They'll scrape throughout the year, but it'll really heat up during the summer and as the rut progresses. And this is what a scrape looks like. A buck will paw out the ground, he will urinate in that scrape, and he will also defecate in that scrape. And often, if you find one, you'll find several. Those are telltale signs that antelope are in the area. If you find those on the trails leading to the water source, you're probably in business. Another thing that I would highly recommend is when you show up for your hunt and you're investigating these water sources, you're probably gonna have a couple that really stand out to you. The most tracks, the most antelope in the area. Obviously, you'll put the pieces of the puzzle together and say, this is where I want to be. All those other tanks and ponds, get a trail camera up if it's legal in the area that you're hunting. I would go with a low budget trail camera, because if you're hunting public land, hey, sometimes those things get stolen, and if you go with a low budget camera, you're not out a lot of money. But with cameras running, you constantly know what's going on at those ponds, tanks, seeps, and springs when you're not there. So finding the right water source isn't complicated. It just takes a little bit of work, and you'll be glad you put that work in when you get the right water source. Now, the last piece of the puzzle, something that we really need to talk about, is your blind setup. When you find that one or two, or however many blinds you plan on setting, here's the deal. Don't believe what you've heard about, oh, you can just throw up a blind and antelope it, they pay it no mind. They absolutely will pay it mind, especially if it's in a wide open area like this. Make sure don't crowd that tank. I like to get 30 to 35 yards off the tank. You should be practicing, trust that shooting. Backing that blind off the water source helps a great deal. Also, if there's old windmill parts, if there's sagebrush, tall weeds, an old tank, tractor parts, you never know what could be around a pond or a tank. Use those items to help disguise your blind. It doesn't take very much. Get that blind set up and you're ready to hunt. Finding the right water source will help up your odds of success greatly and help you put an archery pronghorn on the ground this season. Thanks for taking the time to check out the video. I'm Jay Sposman.